The Kumu Hula is a teacher that loves what she's doing. So it goes right back to you yourself. Being it's a hula, then you must have that love within your heart for the dance itself before you can really teach it out to anyone.
From generations beyond memory, the Hawaiian dance known as hula has been passed from teacher to student, eye to mind, hand to body, voice to heart. Guardians of the culture long before written language, the Kumu Hula of today continue to pass on vast quantities of specialized knowledge to their hamana, or students. The precise use of language, dress and costume, voice, movement and music, scholarship of geography, names and places, plants and poetry. Dancing the history and stories of Hawaii. How does the teacher infuse this legacy in the bodies, minds and hearts of students for generations to come? And what are the educational, the spiritual, the personal paths traveled to earn the title of Kumu Hula? This is where our conversation begins.
Formally dancing hula, I started when I came back from college in 1972 with Hawakale Kamau.
Actually, I give credit to Kawena Pukui because it was she that told my aunt, it's about time you train one of your own in the hula. And that's when Iolani started. And first, everything was done at home. When I talk of Iolani, actually Iolani Luahine, she's the youngest sister of my mother. And so she was my aunt. And when we started was with the basics. When I first started, I never knew the steps, the name of it at all. And you could see the difference because it was Vam, but when I came with Iolani, it's Kaholo. You have the Hela, we have the Uwehe. She says you have to learn the real dance terminology of it. She was a wonderful teacher, yet she was strict in a way that she wants you to know that you didn't just play around. If it's time to dance, you dance. There's time to play, you play.
And there's no way around it. You sit down and you memorize 50 or 60 lines of a chant or whatever it is, and you can't rely on anyone else if she's looking at you and you have an ipu in your hand and she says, go. And early days of hula, what really struck me was that there's a lot of discipline in the hula. And it's mental discipline and physical discipline, not only physical discipline.
I was adopted into a Hawaiian Caucasian family when I was 8 weeks old. As a result, in the family that I was raised in, the dance hula was done quite often. And I was about 13, 14, around there, when I started my really formal training with the Kiahi Luahine. So I was the dancer, and Kawena Pukui, in whose family I was adopted, was the whole power. So we were like a team. So we went to Kiahi Luahine and trained with her for about 2 years.
And so maybe around the age of 11 or 12, I started formal lessons with Maiki Ayu Lake. She taught me everything that I know about hula, and has been responsible for my training and my formative years as far as Olapa. My first introduction to Auntie Maiki was, all we did was sit and write. She wrote down words on the board. She talked about the language, and she explained to us the meaning of those words. And we talked about terminology as far as hula is concerned. And that was our first introduction to hula. And to me, the importance of that aspect was that hula is very much tied to the language.
I had to do the same dance for months, and then when she said, well, that's fine, we had another one. But we did the first one, and then we went to the second one. But now that I've grown older, things that I haven't done in a long time, if I sit and think, it does come back, because by doing it over and over and over, somewhere in your brain it's stored.
My teacher was Maiki Ayu Lake. Her teacher was Lokalia Montgomery. When I was going to start my formal hula training, I had no idea that I was starting my formal hula training. I just knew that I had to show up at this class with an ipu. Ala and I, that's my hula sister, Lena Alahaini Kalama. And so I just went to this Friday night class. We would sometimes get to class late, and the door is always closed, see, and you have to chant to get in. Well, we used to pound on the door, Ala and I, and no one would answer, so we would chant. But of course, we didn't speak the language at the time, you know. We didn't know any of the olikomos and stuff like this, so we were out there going, open the door, open the door. And Mikey would come and open the door and say, just get in here right now, just get in, you know. So we were a very experimental class. We were pretty much the first uniki class from her school. So basically we got away with murder, me and Allah. We got away with murder.
E kuhi kuhi pono I nau iki a me nau nui o ka ike.
Manu Boyd was Charles when he came to my halau. And he was tall. I remember Manu being really tall. And took a long time to get into the groove of things. I don't suppose that I helped any by yelling at him so much.
As a novice student beginning at the age of 15, I think what our teacher did for us was establish a foundation. And the foundation is not only a dance foundation, but also a foundation of values. Specifically, we learn footwork to begin with. You start from the bottom and work your way up. You learn what the foot movements, or what we call the ka'ina vavai, what are they called? You're doing a hela, you're doing a kaholo, that sort of thing. You learn how the body moves.
Keli'i Tau'a, my last formal teacher of Hawaiian hula and oli, was a very, very spiritual teacher. Each teacher, like I said, was different.
When I first started a halau, I always practiced in the outdoors. I wanted to be close to nature, because to me, all the poetry of hula has to do with the elements surrounding us.
Keli'i, to me, was a very spiritual man. When he taught us, much of the lessons would focus on spirituality, on how one felt, on mana, on feeling the dance. Many times he would come up to me and he would just hug me and try to, I think, infuse some of his mana into me, because he told me, "You're so meticulous about your dancing. I just want you to feel your dancing." So he would just hug me and he would hold me for a little while and he would say, "Okay, now I'll try to dance this again."
I try to go to that location so that I didn't have to create a picture. I says, "Look." They looked and I said, and this is why our kupuna taught us how to hold that motion. You can look right in front of you.
I believe that culture can be lost very easily, actually. You know, if there's not a transference of specific ideas, specific beliefs, you know, there's a very, very different kind of learning that goes on when you have to read about something, as opposed when something is passed from word of mouth, from someone that you love, from someone that you respect. When things are passed that way, you hold onto it, you treasure it, and then, knowingly or unknowingly, you pass it on again to someone else whom you love, or maybe someone who is in your class. But those are the things that are passed from generation to generation.
And I think a big part of what I learned being around some of these old timers was I got some of their spirit inside of me. And I think they were purposely there with me to touch me and to love me and to open their hearts to me, because they were giving me a part of themselves so that when they died, it would live on. And you don't get that from a video. I'm not trying to put anyone down. I'm just saying our culture was meant to be human beings touching human beings and spirits touching spirits. So I hope that we don't completely go to a point where we're just learning from videos.
Mai ka pai ke a'o a kamakua, aia he ola malaila.
I have always wanted to be just like my mom, exactly like her, and I recognized her as a Kumu Hula when I was a teenager. Before that, she was just my mom teaching hula. But around my junior, senior year in high school, that's when I recognized that she is somebody important, and our lineage of hula, in which she possesses within her, is going to be part of mine now.
I would say about 8, 9 years old when she really got serious in learning. And that way she was able to pick up, but starting with the same thing, the fundamentals. The same way I learned is the same way that I'm teaching.
By the time I got to 9 or 10, I wanted to know what was going on in there. You know, I kept hearing it over and over again. So I'd go in and I'd imitate her. I'd play the ipu, you know, and I'd kind of point and say, "Oh, you do this and you do that," you know. I totally imitate her.
I would say that the most difficult thing for me in my training that I've experienced is performing under the intense scrutiny of my father and teacher. Because if something is wrong, then I'll get blamed more so than anyone else would, or my sister for that matter. So I think that being a student of my parent is really, really hard for me and anyone else who's ever danced for their parent or a close relative.
Having my father as my teacher, it's really hard because he plays 2 different roles. At times he needs to be my teacher when, you know, I need a father around.
It's not easy to teach your own children in a formal situation with many, many students right alongside, because what you have to do is you have to take off your papa hat and you have to treat them just like they're another student whom you don't know. And as soon as the class is over, then you have to reestablish the ties of being father and child again. I think it was really much more difficult years ago when they were first in class, because, you know, they would be looking at me and smiling and says, "Oh, look at me, you know, I'm over here," and I sort of have to ignore them, you know, and it's like, why are you ignoring me?
I put a certain kind of pressure on myself because I don't want to do anything that would shame my mom. Everybody automatically assumes that I know everything because I'm the son of a Kumu Hula, but it's not that much different than being one of her students. I mean, sure, I'm going to learn things from everyday life living with her, but that just because I'm the son of a Kumu Hula doesn't mean that I'm going to know everything that she does.
It is very difficult teaching your own son. Sometimes I expect more out of him than I do any of my other students. I expect him to be on top of things because he's my son. I expect him not to be late. I expect him not to forget his things.
It's frustrating. It's very frustrating to teach her something and just see her nonchalantly blow it off.
Well, to become a Kumu Hula, from now I'm going to have to really get into dancing the hula, because right now I wouldn't say that I'm advanced. I'm still learning about the different dances and what it means.
Kalai, she's very special. This girl, when she was young, she just loved the hula. I see the twinkle in her eyes when she was 2 years old, when she saw me dancing and she'd copy me.
I know it's going to be a different feeling being the Kumu Hula. I'm hoping I don't stress out, because it really makes, for me, when they stress out, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. I mean, I wish they would just settle back a little or something, just take a chill pill, just relax. But then I know that I'm probably going to stress out, so I guess I can't say anything.
It's kind of a bond that I have with my mom. It's strange at times because she brings things from home, things from my personal life into the class, and it's weird. Sometimes I don't agree with it, but it's hard too, because when we disagree, it's like everybody's around us is whoa, relax.
He can wrinkle his eyebrow and look at me like, you're gonna do what? So he will question me, where nobody else will. I'm the Kumu Hula, whatever she says is fine with us. She's the Kumu, she makes the final decisions, not Jeffrey. What? He's the first one to react to something that he doesn't think is, I don't know about that, Ma. You're going to do what? We're going to wear what? So at times it can be very uncomfortable having your son in your class. We're very close and I love him dearly, but sometimes, he just kind of raises your eyebrows.
We share that bond inside of class and outside of class. I think it brings us a lot closer to spend so much time together.
So what I've got to do now is take this dance, make it mine. Although Auntie Io danced it, my mom danced it, or chanted for Auntie Io, I've got to make it mine. I'm not here to replace Auntie Io, replace my mom. I just want to carry on the lineage.
Lo no hiaka, kapolia opele.
E hana mua a paa ke kahua, ma mua o ke a'o ana aku ia ha'i.
When my kumu, Robert Casimiro, started teaching hula after his uniki, he was even younger than I was, I think, when I went through my uniki. But from the stories that he shared with us in the halau, Robert was always considered a punahele of Auntie Maiki Ayu. That means a favorite.
When I started, when I was 25, my students were 15, 16 years old. It's a 10-year difference, but it's still not that much. And so it was real difficult for me because I was trying so hard to pretend that I knew exactly what it was I was doing.
When I began class in 1978 as a 15-year-old high school student, I really felt that I was yelled at more than I was taught, because it was just kind of a way to make a lot of noise, to perhaps cover up lack of experience.
I thought that was the right way to make them listen. And so I would place the fear of Kumu in their beings so that they would pay attention.
There are a lot of young teachers today, and there are a lot of talented teachers today, but there is no substitute for experience. And I think our teacher has really come full circle in that area. Today in class, he's very understanding, very mellow.
But maybe when you're that young, you're allowed some years of stupidity. And hopefully what will happen is you will learn from those lessons to make yourself become a better person. I'm a much nicer person than I was in 1975. I'm much more patient. I'm understanding to a fault. sometimes, but it's just the way that I've decided to go.
He is very knowledgeable, he's very creative, yet his roots and tradition are so strong, and he's more traditional today, I think, than he's ever been before.
E lawe e ke a'o a mālama a e oi mau ka na'auau.
I think I can tell when a student is prepared to become a Kumu Hula because they have something inside them that speaks out to you.
Your kumu will tell you whether you can teach or you cannot, whether they feel that you're ready to or not. You don't take it upon yourself. Just because I learned this dance, I can just go ahead and do it and teach it here, there. And you have to have the permission of your teacher. There's always this respect between the pupil and the teacher.
Uniki is like a graduation. Puka is really the name for it too, but you're graduating as a teacher.
We understand the term uniki to derive from the word niki, which in Hawaiian means to tie. And what the uniki ceremony does is it ceremonially binds the knowledge that you have received from your teacher to you.
I need to know that they're going to be responsible for all of the knowledge that has been passed down to me by my teacher, and that they're going to be teaching in a manner that is responsible to my ancestors, to the Hawaiian community that went before us, and to retain the traditions of hula.
There are different ways that Hawaiians approach traditional knowledge. Some people stayed for a long time with a hula teacher, a lifetime, and were past the traditional knowledge. And then today we have schools where people set up for certain periods of time, and then they're graduated, and they have this quote-unquote title that they can put on their name. I feel that Kumu Hula today has a different title than it did probably in the old days, and as long as you understand that, it's fine.
I can't just look at someone and say that's a kumu unless I have taught them. Then I would know, because each halau teaches differently.
Huakale was never really graduated in the traditional way that Auntie Il was graduated, with an altar and with the gods. And in that, she was not graduated that way. Her students weren't graduated that way.
But not to say that you have to uniki. That was never taught with the Iolani. I says, today I'm still learning. We never stop learning. There's always something new.
The formal graduation ceremony for Kumu Hula, Olapa, and Ho'opa'a is an uniki ritual. And that particular ritual includes purification, cleansing at the ocean, in the ocean, or a sprinkling of Hawaiian salt water, and meditation, a kapu of silence. It would include fasting and the Ailolo ceremony, which is a ritual feast of a pure black pig that's cooked in an imu, no part of it raw, no part of it overcooked. And graduates take part of all parts of that pig. That entire pig has to be eaten at that one sitting.
For me, the arriving moment was to do a formal ceremony and be able to look at working by yourself and getting students to work to the level that you feel your kumus would accept, and then calling your kumus to come and look and get their acceptance. And when you get their acceptance, then you can say, all right, you've arrived.
There's a olelo no eau that says, "Ole pau I ka halau ho'okahi." All knowledge does not come from one school. If they can understand that, you know, the different halaus throughout the islands, there is no right, there is no wrong. We are just keepers of our culture. One dance from Moloka'i might be different from a dance from Kauai. So all of us doing the same dance, we're just keepers. We're just showing a version of a hula. And so, you know, I hope they can sit back and appreciate one another instead of sit back and criticize.
When this is over, when this life is over, and when they talk about me in the hula world, it's not in the singing world now, this is just in the hula world, I would like them to say that he was a student of Maiki'aiu Lake. That's enough.
I think the strongest message that hula has in terms of how knowledge is passed in a Hawaiian mind is for a Hawaiian person, in order to learn from someone, you have to have a bond of love. And you have to love your teacher, and you have to know your teacher loves and cares about you. And I think that transcends just Hawaiian culture. But I know for Hawaiian students, and in hula especially, it's very important.
I try to think of this as 2 or 3 or 4 generations beyond me. Am I trying to perpetuate Manu Boyd, or am I trying to perpetuate an age-old tradition that I'm just a conduit for, that was received from Keahi Luahine and Kawena Pukui and Lokalia Montgomery and Maiki'aiu Lake, Robert Casimiro, Manu Boyd, and who knows who's next?
I've always told my students that if anything, I wanted to leave cement blocks in the sand rather than footsteps in the sand. And so I'm hoping that my legacy to them, or the gift that I would like to leave them, is that they have a love and an appreciation for my ancestors, my teachers, and for the hula. That they'll learn to appreciate it and love it the way that I do.
So it goes right back to you yourself. Being it's a hula, then you must have that love within your heart for the dance itself before you can really teach it out to anyone.